I almost did the classic virtual meeting mistake where you're talking and you're on mute. Okay, so let's wait for people to join because this is meant to be a live Q&A session. And I'm just waiting for people to join me. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we have got today. So we've got 2 people joining. It's amazing. We've got 3 people. Fantastic, fantastic. So the way that this class is going to run today is that you'll be asking me questions and I'll be answering. If I can bring people live on the chat or on the call, I can do that, but I'm still learning a little bit of the technology, so I may not just be able to do that today. But yeah, let us know where you are joining from. That would be fantastic if you can show sort of where you're joining from. That would be brilliant. Okay. And let's get started. If we don't have any questions, I've got some things that I just wanted to share. Some of my lessons learned from, just kind of being in HR in the last 16, 17 years plus. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of that. But more importantly, I want your questions. I want people to ask some of the things that, you may kind of be going through. Any questions, whether that's a tech question in terms of HR, the technical aspects of HR, or you just wanted to ask a question around career, for example. So the way that we're going to do this is put your questions in the chat and I will start answering. So we've got 6 people live on the call, which is fantastic. Put your questions on the chat. Tell us where you're calling from or where you're joining from. That would be fantastic. It's always good to know how far wide, we're kind of reaching people. And let me just take your questions. As I wait for you to do that, just a quick introduction. My name is Joy Adeyemi, and I'm a senior HR professional. Been in HR, like I said, for many, 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 many years. And I'm also the founder of HR Design School. And I always like to talk about the vision because the more I talk about it, the more it becomes clear, even in my own mind. But the more that I believe that, there is a lot of value that HR Design School can bring to the HR world. And HR Design School really is its mission. Our mission is one to equip HR professionals with skills to be able to transform how people experience work. And that requires more than just traditional HR skills. That requires skills around creativity, innovation, and the ability to be able to disrupt the status quo so that you can add value, okay, to your HR profession, to the organization that you work. I found that in my own career, the parts where I made the greatest value was doing things outside of the box, was doing the non-standard things, was being able to ask the questions that people were afraid to ask at work, was being able to challenge things, was being able to innovate, to be able to change the way that we do things. And some of the things had been years and years and years, but just being able to develop that confidence and the competence to be able to do that, I found that it added a lot of value. Okay, so that's it. So let's go. Questions. I think we've got about, 4, I can see 4 people on LinkedIn. I know that this is also live on other platforms, so I may not be able to see them. But please let me have your questions. I think somebody must be typing or something. I don't know, it hasn't come through yet. But let's wait to see that. Okay, so that's kind of it for me. And whilst I wait for the question, I guess I just wanted to share some of my experience, particularly, I guess, kind of setting up HR, starting out in HR. And I guess my top tips around what makes you a very solid HR professional, depending on what you want to achieve in your own career. The first thing now, depending on the part of the world that you are in, that you belong to, for example, I would say the first thing that you want to do is to make sure that you've got an appreciably good foundational knowledge of HR. And by that, it could be a first degree, it could be a certificate course, depending on the certification that exists within your country. And it could also be a master's degree or anything like that. So that's kind of the first thing that you want to be able to do. You want to be able to ensure that you have that kind of foundational knowledge. Now, it could be as basic as, a certificate course in human resource management, because what that does is that it gives you the building blocks to be able to understand when things are happening at work. Okay, don't forget to put your questions down. What questions come into your mind? This is literally Ask Me Anything. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing that you want to do. The next thing is fantastic. Thanks for that, Kemi. Please put your questions, any questions you have about HR, technical side, or just the career. That would be fantastic. And also, let me just do this, because the last time I tried to do this, it didn't work. So I could invite guests to come on the platform. Okay, I could invite guests to come on the platform. But the last time I tried to do it, it didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the event invitation, and I'm going to put it on the event, I think the content, whatever that's called, or maybe the comment or the chat. Okay, I would put it on there, and please. It didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the event invitation. I think I was, yeah. Let me know if you could hear. I've done that. I've put that on there. So let me know that you can see it. And what that does is, if you wanted to ask any question and you're happy to come on screen, use that link. You come onto the studio, and then you can, you keep me company basically in the studio. Okay, so you kind of be my co-host. All right. So, and then I was saying that the second thing you want to do is to find an organization, any organization that is ready to take you, if that's your first role within HR, and then you begin to learn the ropes. Okay. You begin to learn the ropes around HR, and then as you grow, you develop yourself. And I have deliberately and intentionally designed my HR career, so that I would have a wide range of experience. And I had a very, very interesting conversation with a CEO recently. Okay, so let me just pin this up. If you want to join me at the studio, please, you can see the pinned comment up there. Feel free to do that. Right, so James, welcome. James is asking a question. He's joining from Nigeria. He's currently the key account manager of Viron in Nigeria. My question is, I'm preparing to join my family in the UK. How do I fit into FMCG, so that's fast-moving consumer goods organization in the UK, at managerial level? And what are some of the professional certification do I advise? So first thing, James, and that's a fantastic question. My first question would be, why do you want to continue in the FMCG sector? And again, it's a relevant question, because, there is an opportunity potentially, if you're relocating into a different country, to explore other sectors that could maximize the skills that you've got. Okay, so I think that's one. And as a key account manager, I'm suspecting that that's just that's kind of like a customer service type role, where you're managing different groups of customers. You could potentially just say, actually, you don't, that's a transferable skill. That's a kind of skill set that you develop, that you could transfer to other businesses or to other sectors. You can transfer that into financial services sector. But to your point, I think FMCG, because that's your experience, your background, it's easier for you to do that. Now, I'm not very, again, I probably need a follow-on question to say, by key account manager, what kind of, I guess, in what area? I'm assuming that is customer service. Please let me know if it's something else. Maybe it's HR, key account manager, or any other thing. But let me know. But based on the question that you've asked, how do you find your fit into FMCG? So there's tons and tons of FMCG organizations within the UK. So you're going to be fishing from a very large pond, which is fantastic, because it means that you're not restricted. Okay, so you're going to be fishing from a large pond. What I would say is, the first thing that you want to do is to begin to explore the list of all the FMCG organizations within the UK, and start to explore their job adverts, and to see what sorts of things that they are asking people to have. That's your first job. So, for example, if you wanted to move, let's say Nestle, Nestle as an organization, you're looking to work within that business. You go into their website and check all the roles that they've got advertised, and begin to see the types of things that they're asking for in terms of, what qualification. If you're lucky enough to immediately find that they've got a key account manager role or something similar, you would immediately see what is essential or what is desirable, within that job description. So that's kind of your first step. The second step that I would say is, whilst that's your aspiration, try to explore other organizations, because there are some organizations that are kind of complementary to FMCGs. Okay, they're complementary to FMCGs, and some organizations will be willing and open to taking you on, even though you don't have experience within a specific sector, but they find FMCG as a complementary sector. Okay, so I'll give an example. If somebody has always worked in the financial services sector, or let's say in the banks, right? They are other organizations, for example, let me think, fintech, which you could say is financial services, or even organizations that are completely polar opposites may find you attractive as well, because they may believe, right, what are the things within financial services sector that is unique? Maybe it's fast-paced, it's very high on regulatory compliance, and they would believe that people that have experience within that type of organization, can also tap their skills transferred into their specific sectors. So that's the second thing I'll say you do. In parallel, don't focus so much on FMCGs. Use that, that's your aspiration in the end. Try and look for the ones that you want to work for. Look to see if they've got the types of role that you want, but in parallel, look for other roles within other organizations that you believe it would be right. The third thing I would say you should do, and this was something that I didn't know when I came into the UK, is to find somebody like a mentor or somebody that already has their feet within the organization or the sector that you're looking to work, because then they will be able to give you live examples. They'll be able to give you coaching, mentoring, but more importantly, they may be able to influence you getting a job. Okay, so you have to look for somebody that maybe works in an organization that can help you escalate quickly your application, help you with your application, how to write the CV, how to interview, and all of that. And I would say the final thing that you would do is also coaching, because every country is different. And, when I came into the UK, I struggled a lot with just some of the cultural differences from where I was coming from, which was Nigeria. So I needed a lot of help. And it took a lot of trial and error to be able to understand, some of the ways that they work, some of the ways that you would answer questions. For example, the UK is very big on pragmatic application of your knowledge rather than the certification. So certification is good, but the UK would always, most of the time, would always favor somebody that has a practical application of their knowledge into a certain circumstance or situation, rather than just having certification. Okay. And I would say, if you come into the UK, I can always, we can always meet up, for example. I can always support you and help, in the way that I can. I've never worked within the FMCG market before, but I'm sure that I would, I'll have people that can support, or at least give you, quick tips around career transition in a different country. That was a fantastic question, James. Let's see if we've got more questions. Okay, and whilst we're waiting for more questions to come through, actually, let us talk about, transitioning into a different country, because I don't know where people are joining from, but I suspect some of you are joining from other parts of the world. I live in the UK. I came into the UK in 2006. I came in straight to do a master's course in human resource management. And trust me, the transition was massive, because it was a completely different kind of culture. The things that, was valued back home was completely different from what was valued in the UK. So I had to quickly learn how to apply my theoretical academic knowledge into work. And one of the things that I find about HR, because HR is, that's my core, that's my bread and butter, is that sometimes we focus so much on the certification. And when you turn up to an interview, you may struggle if you have not somehow internalized and practicalized that knowledge that you've learned, and how to apply it into a real life situation. And I think that's a massive gap that I found. I found people amazing on their CV. They've done all the relevant qualification and all of that fantastic stuff. They know the underpinning theoretical knowledge. The challenge is, tell me, when you're asked the question, tell me a time when, or they just ask you a random question, you would be talking more about the theory rather than the practical side. So my advice for every HR professional is whatever you learn, be able to master the topic beyond its theory, its theory, and be able to practicalize it. And the way that I personally do that is I learn a lot with, if I pick a topic, let's say talent management, right? It's taught in school. You kind of know all the layers within talent management, the governance. I begin to look for case studies on how people apply talent management. I soak up that knowledge within the case study, and all of that. I look for models and I begin to apply the models on a kind of an experimentation. Apply the knowledge. How do I use a 9-box grid, for example, in talent management? How do I use it? What are some of the questions that I want to ask to make sure that I'm able to complete this talent map or talent mats in the most effective way? What are the outputs of a talent management process? What are some of the examples of talent management that I've done, not necessarily using the placemat or the talent mapping 9-box grid, but what are some of the things that I've done in an ad hoc way that I could use as an example, to fit into this talent map? How do I govern this process? How do I make sure that I can apply it and apply it and apply it again and make it work? Okay, and all of that. Yeah, fantastic, James. Please feel free. You're connected to me on LinkedIn. Reach out, and the whole world is built around network. You will be surprised how the kind of help that is available out there. Okay, so make sure that your experience, especially if you're transitioning to a different country or even a different organization, make sure that you have the practical stuff, because that's what sets you apart. In my experience of interviewing thousands of professionals, both HR and outside of HR, the difference between people who get the job and people who don't, for me, are two things. One is confidence. People that they just exude a lot of confidence. Even when they're not sure, they would say, sorry, I'm not sure, but they come up with something on their feet. But the second most important one is the people that are the most trustworthy, or the most real, in terms of the people who are able to say and relate to the organization in practical ways. Okay, so we're not just talking theory here. We're talking about the practical stuff. This is how I would do it. If I'm having a conversation about interview, I make the conversation my own, and I will say, oh, this is an example that I can give you, and these are some of the challenges that I faced. This is the way. If I had to do it again, I probably would do it better. And you make the conversation very organic, very fluid. You're very confident about the way that you're expressing your experience. If you're unsure, you would say, oh, that's a kind of a different question. I'm not sure about how to answer that. Can we come back to that? Maybe as we go along, I may think about a better example to give you. All of those things, they're kind of what sets you apart to the standard person who is kind of coming up with these are the potential questions that they would ask, and then they're answering it in a very mechanical way. Okay, fantastic. Have we got any other questions? Have we got any other questions? Let's see if we've got any other questions. I need questions. I am super hungry to be answering all your questions. Right, from the 5 people who are online, let me know if you've got any questions. Okay, so that's with that one. So just some quick tips. Make sure that you practicalize your knowledge as much as possible. I think it's a Daniel Goleman book. I can't remember the book right now, but it's a popular quote to say that for you to gain mastery in a particular topic, you have to learn. You have to put in the hours. And I think they came up with something like 10,000 hours for you to be able to gain mastery. When I was studying innovation and design and HR, I put in a lot of hours, and I'm still putting in hours, because I don't even think I'm up to 10,000 hours yet. But I realize that the more you involve and you immerse yourself into a particular topic, the better you become, or the more mastery that you gain, and the more able you are to navigate any kind of scenario that comes from that. Okay. Another one that I was going to talk about is actually, and just kind of linked to that, is how you can position yourself as a master or to gain mastery in a particular area within your field. Now, if you work in HR, some of the things, there's different areas that you can specialize. And I'm going to do another class around whether people should talk about specialism or being a generalist. So whether you're a specialist or a generalist. So, that's kind of 2 ways that you can look at it. My personal preference is that I believe in hybrid model, what some organizations will call the T-shaped professional. So the T shape just means at kind of the horizontal level, the top part of your T, if you like, you would have you. That's kind of your generalist experience or knowledge, and the vertical side, which is the lower part, kind of your T, is your deep specialist area. And I think that represents very much my preference, which is all about being hybrid. Because in the world that we exist now, you can't afford to be playing in a very constricted specialist area when you have opportunity to express yourself more broadly. And from some of my experience in working in organizations or talent management, the people with breadth tend to be, not all the time, tend to be more valued over people with depth. Okay, so they are valued in different ways, but when you look at leadership position, then you're going towards people that are exhibiting more breadth or at least some kind of versatility. You know, they're versatile. They can navigate one or more areas. Those people tend to be valued. They tend to have more opportunities because they can be deployed to different projects, different scenarios, different teams, different positions within the organization. So for me, I believe that from my experience, having kind of breadth with some level of specialism is fantastic, because what that does is, one, it doesn't limit you to a particular area. And because your needs as a human being changes all the time, it means that you can satisfy your needs as you go along, your career. Okay, so find an area of specialism and then also develop your breadth. For example, my personal example is that I love doing I love anything to do with strategy design. I like, because it allows me to flex my creativity, and I like using tools. I like using business tools, business model canvas, the McKinsey 7S organizational development tools. I love it. So for me, developing and designing strategy enables me to kind of flex my muscles on those tools. And I like change. I like process change. I like going through, looking at things and be able to fix areas that are not working. I absolutely, absolutely love it. That's my specialism. But I love also managing. I love managing. And you know why I love managing? Because I'm very strategic in the way that I operate. um, I do not always have the time to execute, right? So I'm very much a design strategic phase. But when it comes to execution, I just do not have the time. And hence, I need to have a team with me all the time. Okay. So that's why, because I have the ability to then delegate the execution part to the team. So that's kind of my expertise. But I very much remain in the generalist space within HR, so that way I can maintain the breadth that I need and I can navigate different types of jobs. I've done project work before. I've done organizational development work, and all of that. So that's a quick one. I've got a question here. It says, how can one implement design thinking and reward management? Thanks, Kolapo. That's a fantastic question. Design thinking, I don't know how many people know about design thinking, but if you've taken the 2 free modules that we've got on the HR Design School platform, you would see that I've used design thinking as the base for 2 particular subject areas. One, how to solve complex problems by design, and how to design HR policies. Now, that's just to give you an idea that you can apply design thinking to literally any scenario in life. I know that sounds like an oversell, but that's the reality. When you get very familiar with that tool, you can do that. And Colapra is giving me kind of an idea on how to do that. Well, on other areas you can do. So reward management. So what is reward management? Reward management, simply put, is just the design of how you reward, where you recognize, first of all, you reward employees within an organization. Okay, it's how do we, what do we pay them? How do we pay them? What kind of reward should we give? And to either engage them, retain them, attract them, and all of those sorts of things. Basically, from start to end, how do we attract people with the kind of rewards? How do we recognize people when they're having really, really good performance? And sometimes, how do we release them within an organization? Because again, how do we reward, or how do we release? What kind of reward strategy should we have when we're releasing people? And then that goes back to your pension management. So within reward, you find benefits, you find pensions as a kind of reward. You find the normal bonus packages as a kind of reward. You find even your normal Friday pizza, or your teas and coffees, fruits, those sorts of things, or any other kind of thing. So how do you use design thinking? Now, design thinking is a tool. It's an innovation tool that is used to do that's used to solve a complex problem. At its simplest, that's what it does. So there are 5 stages within a design thinking method. There is the empathy stage, depending on the one you're using. I am very, very familiar with the Stanford model design thinking tool, which is really just 5 steps, although I kind of add the last step in the end, which is implementation. But again, it's implied within that model that implementation is a given. You have to implement whatever you've come up with. So what it does is that it takes you from a place of understanding the problem, which is your empathy. You empathize by immersing yourself, engaging with your users, who could be employees and all of that, to first of all understand the problem, because design thinking starts from the premise that if you don't understand the people you're trying to solve a problem for, you're highly likely to come up with a solution that does not work for them. Okay, so that's the first thing. So design thinking starts from empathy. You will need to empathize, put yourself in the shoes of your customer or the people you're looking to solve a problem for. In case of reward management, that would be your employees. What do they want? What kind of problems are they going through in terms of reward point of view? Is your reward system even broken? Your first question is the reward system, is the reward process broken? Is our reward strategy broken? Is it delivering the kind of benefit or the kind of outcome that we want? Is it delivering value? That's kind of your first step. What it then does is it takes you through the next step, which is your define state. Now, define is really critical, because what you've done with your empathy stage is that you've gone out to your market, your users, your employees, and all of that, and you've collected a ton of questions. Just imagine when you're doing staff survey and people have just told you a whole ton of information. The next step within the design thinking model is to take you into the define, meaning you put all those information into a filter and you begin to filter what is useful, what is not useful, and begin to make sense of all of that information. Now, the first step, which is empathy, you are diverging, meaning you're going as broad as possible without any kind of format or shape. You just want to understand what's happening. You are immersing yourself. You can talk to people via interviews. You can watch people, how they relate to maybe your reward platform, depending on what problem you're trying to solve. You're doing all of that. And then when you get to the define stage, you are converging. You're now trying to make sense and draw into some simple conclusions as much as possible some of the information that you have gotten from your user group or your market, depending on the context. Once you are able to get that information together, let's say within your define stage, you should be able to come up with some very high level problem that you're trying to solve. I will give you a very, very quick example. For reward, it could be that you found from your empathizing stage that employees tend to leave the organization because there is no formal way of rewarding high performance. Okay, so you don't have any performance. You have a performance management process, but there is no reward attached to performance, and some people are leaving. That could be one of the problems that you found from empathizing with your users. Okay, so let's stick with that. Let's say the organization does not have a recognition and reward strategy for high performing employees. Okay, let's assume that's now the problem. That's what you've defined the multitude of problems you found in the market. It can be summed up in this one aspect. Sometimes you have multiple, but let's assume from the work that we've done, employees. So your problem statement is employees are disengaged and tend to leave your organization because they don't feel they are recognized and adequately rewarded when they are performing at a high standard. Okay, so that's your problem statement. What you then do in your define stage, and this is some of the things that I teach in design thinking class, is there is a tool called How Might We? So it's HMW. How Might We? How Might We is an inspirational, it's a way to craft an inspirational problem statement to enable you move to the next stage, which we'll talk about. But very, very quickly is the way that Kolapo, you are going to tweak that particular statement or that problem statement is, how might we reward or actually, let's flip it this way. How might we recognize high performing employees within our business and reward them adequately? Can you see, like, for me, I find that statement very inspirational. Some of the quick tips about how might we statement is, it mustn't have a solution in it. Okay. Remember, we said recognize and reward. It's broad. It's not a solution, right? It must do that. And then it must be inspirational. It must be broad enough to stir and encourage ideas, but also be, I would say, be but a balance between not too broad and not too narrow. Okay, so that you're not very narrow. You know, you don't want it to be too narrow. For example, a narrow statement could be something like, how might we ensure that every employees that perform to this level within the business are rewarded with money? That's a very narrow statement. Plus, you've kind of embedded financial reward as a potential solution, and you don't want that within your design phase. Okay, so now you've established the problem statement. You then move to the next stage, which is to ideate. In your ideation phase, you are gathering ideas. You are asking everybody to tell you, tell me what you think. How might we recognize and reward top performers within our organization? Now you get a team of people together, a diverse team, because you want a diverse set of ideas within that project. Get them together, and then people start to give you ideas. We think we should do this. We think we should pay people more. We think we should give them stars, for example. We think we should do this. We think we should do that. Let's say people come up with 100 ideas. There are very, very many tools that you can use to come up with ideas. You could ask a challenging question. Does it have to be monetary value? People would then, get people to think outside of the box. That's your ideation stage. Again, you're at that point diverging again, trying to gather ideas. Within the ideation stage, you then come up with, different, maybe a set of 3 to 4 top level solutions that you could use that could potentially solve that problem. Now, always remember, your problem statement needs to be at the forefront, so that when you're coming up with solution, you're asking, would this potentially answer that question that we're rewarding people, right? Let's say you then come up with an idea. Let's say you come up with a say thanks or a thank you type of reward strategy, a thank you from the CEO. Let's assume thank you. Let's say you come up with an idea which is say thanks, CEO gratitude, right? With some shopping cards or with some reward cards. For example, say we're going to give them a, what do they call those cards? The reward cards or the reward vouchers. Yes, reward vouchers that you can get from shops. If people perform very, very well, the organization would take them on, you would have points, say 2,000 points, which is equivalent of, let's say, $1,000, and you can use it to shop anywhere. Let's say that's it. That's a potential idea to recognize and to reward. Can you see how the steps are adding up, right? And you do that within your ideation stage. Now you then move to the 4th stage of the design thinking process, which is now to prototype. Your prototype is basically where you bring your ideas to life, right? You begin to give it some kind of shape, some kind of form. All of this time, you have just been thinking, you've had your flip charts, you're writing things down, and all of that, voucher things, some of that, and all of that. So now you have got to this point where you are now prototyping. Prototyping is just simply bringing it to life. At this point, you may create a kind of dummy system. You may create a kind of app, temporary app or platform. You could even do paper prototype, right? You could do paper prototype that says, right, from this point, employee performs high, manager sends an email to HR, HR recognizes top performance, HR informs manager of the reward voucher platform, manager selects the voucher that they want for the employee receives a notification in their mailbox to go and receive their voucher, employee shops in their relevant shop, blah, blah, the process closes. Okay, so that's just one way of prototyping, which is a proper paper prototype. You could go a step higher and do a high fidelity type of prototype where you maybe create a kind of a dummy platform and all of that. Or you could even do role plays. Role plays are amazing. I like, easy role plays if people are willing to act the thing, and you can just kind of play out how that process will work with the employee. Okay. When you do that, you then test it, so you've prototyped, that's at stage 4, then you test. Now you carry that system and you go and test it out to the market. Now go back to the people that shared the challenges with you and just say, look, does this work? Tell me how you felt. You're watching them to see how did they feel about it. Did they like it? Are they likely? You could ask questions. Are they likely to now stay in the organization if they're high performing, or their high performance is recognized within the business? And if that works, sometimes you may get feedback, oh, we don't really like it. We think the process is too clumsy. Some people may say, rather than just vouchers, can we have the option of converting it into cash? Can we use that exact same process, and all of that? Some people may say, can we have different levels where some people could be a voucher, some people is some amount, some people it could be just cards, whatever it is. You go back, you fine tune your prototype, your product or your solution, and then the final stage, which is kind of, I would say the sixth place, is now to implement your process. So Kolakwa, I hope that kind of gives you an idea how you can use design thinking in reward management. And you can use it in literally everything. You start from, is this even really a problem? I'm going to give you a very, very quick tip. When I joined HR, right? Or when I joined HR, when I started learning a lot about design thinking and innovation tools, right? One of the things that I learned very quickly was my ability to be able to ask the right questions. And I noticed as a manager, I'm very, very busy just with the sheer volume of work, but also managing people. It takes a lot of time and investment to be able to manage people properly. And so I was struggling with workload, but the more I learned about design thinking and the power it has to be able to fine tune questions or source information from a multitude of questions or even potential solutions, I'm going to be honest and just say, I think my workload reduced by about 20%. Because what I was then able to do was, once a problem is brought to me, the first question I'm asking is it a real problem? Is it a real problem? And there's something that Stanford model does. It asks about real win-worth. Is it real? The first question, for you to achieve the belief, for you to guarantee that something is a real problem worth investing your time to solve. First thing you have to ask, is it real? Is the problem a real problem? Because a lot of people in organizations and all over the world may be screaming about something that, well, it's not really a problem. It's just maybe a glitch in a system or something like that. The second question within that model, is it worth it? Meaning, if we invested the time and the resources required to solve this problem, is it worth our time? Now, you can decide what worth means to you. Is it worth the financial output? Is it worth the recognition? Anything that worth could mean or value could mean for you. The third thing that it does ask is, can we win? Can we win is quite important, because can we win means, do we have the ability to be able to deliver the solution in the way that solves that problem? Now, a lot of can we win bothers around your technical abilities. I mean, Kolakwa, for example, in your case, let's assume that that's a real problem. Have you got the right resources to be able to solve that problem in terms of your competencies, in terms of your technological abilities or resources, in terms of the time, in terms of even money to invest, and all of that. So that's one of the things I learned. I will say, is there a real problem? Because sometimes managers will say to me, oh gosh, there is this problem, and everybody is like screaming, and I'll be, how many people? What's the size of the problem? And sometimes I will realize it's one person complaining. Is that a real problem? Is that worth investing your time, your resources to be able to solve that problem? Okay, so is it real? Can we win? Is it worth it? Okay, so that's one of the ways to do so. Kolakwa, I hope that helped you. Any other questions? Any other questions? Let's see. So if I'm just going to give it kind of with 12:40, I'll give it another 5 minutes. If we don't have any questions, I'll just close. But I think, James did ask a fantastic question about, relocating to the UK and how to support. And I think that there are practical things that you can do. The culture would be completely different from the work culture that you've experienced before. Be open-minded about other sectors that you could potentially work. So don't limit yourself to kind of just the FMCG group. You could expand to other groups. And another thing, the second question from Kolakwa, which was around design thinking, is yes, design thinking can be applied not just to reward management, but to a host of other things. I use design thinking for policy design. I use it for, team organizational structural design. and all of that, and it works in fantastic ways. It helps you to kind of take your team through a series of structured phases to be able to achieve an overall outcome, which hopefully should be a solution. And guess what? Even if the solution doesn't work, there's so many things that you can learn. One of the things I've learned about design thinking is it's not one of those things. Your return on investment is not necessarily the a product, a solution, a service design, an experience that is designed, a new way of doing things. That's fantastic. But in the true sense of being an innovative professional is the journey along the way. It is what you learn in the implementation or in the journey to getting there. And sometimes being able to cut your losses in phase 2, but maybe you realize actually that's not very clear. For me, is value. It's value. You can show that you took the team through a process of understanding the customer and then being able to come up with an outcome that says, we've checked with the customer during our empathy stage, and we found out that the problem is actually not a big one. And remember, I talked about the real win worth. And when you did your quick question around, is it real? Can we win? Is it worth it? You realize it's real. We can win, but it's not worth it because the return on investment is going to be really small. So those are some of the things that you have to start doing within your career. And those are some of the things that being a design thinking professional, for example, enables you to do. It's an added skill. I think that is super, super amazing. And we'll be launching a design thinking course very soon, which really takes you, it's such a fantastic course, still in the design phase, but I'm going to be teaching people how to design any aspects of HR or reimagine how any aspects of HR using real life case studies of organizations that have done that. And then we'll be taking ourselves through that journey and hopefully coming up with a solution in the end. Okay. So without further ado, thank you so much to everybody who's joined this live class. What I want people to do is, so we've got, if you go onto the HR Design School page on LinkedIn, we've got 2 courses, and I'm going to try and pin them to the top so that I kind of feature them so that you can see them. We've got about 20 thereabout people who have done the course for free. The feedback to date has been amazing. I'll be personally reaching out to those people so that they can share their experience. That just gives you a very whistle-stop tour of design thinking that you can use to solve problems, understanding what problems, what does a complex problem mean? You'll be shocked how many people are not able to answer. What do you define a complex problem as? And I explained that in that course, but also policy design. Okay, you may be involved in designing policies at some point within your career. And wouldn't it be fantastic that you are able to suggest a different way of designing a policy? I shared an example of an organization that was looking to design a fertility or a treatment policy. And by using the design thinking model, they were able to design something that worked for the people that were actually going through the problem and not just something that was done outside of the people who experience the problem themselves. So I want you to take on that course. It's completely free. You just get to register on our platform and you'll be able to take that course for free and begin to build on your skill, because I'm very much, like I said very early on the call, I'm very much a pragmatic person. I want to always know, if you're teaching me anything, I'm thinking, how do I apply this practically? I'm not a big fan of theory. I love theory, I think, because they're fantastic. But again, theory doesn't work if you cannot apply them practically. So these bite-sized courses enable you to practicalize what you're learning in really, really practical ways. And that's the reason we do some of these live and more courses. We'll be churning out courses. We'll be getting other professionals across the world to also share tips and tools on how you can enhance your HR career. Okay, good. Right, somebody is asking that, can you run me through the process of designing a standard operating procedure? I guess that's what you mean by SOP for a startup business, right? Standard operating procedure. You can absolutely use design thinking. I don't think we'd have time to go through that because that's a really, really big one. What I would say, this is the things that I would say to you. That's a problem that needs to be solved within our organization. So this is what I think you should do. First of all, if you can take our problem solving course, it's completely free. I think it's about 35 minutes, they're about long. That would be good. If you can take that, that tells you about problem. So first of all, think, what problem are you trying to solve? Now, a standard operating procedure for a startup business, the best tool that I'm going to recommend for you is Business Model Canvas. If you search on Google, you would find Business Model Canvas. There are tons and tons of videos that you can use. And Business Model Canvas enables you to think of the business you're trying to create. What types of customers are you trying to attract? What is the strategy of that business? What are the value streams of that business? What are the resources that you require for that business? And all of that. Business Model Canvas is your tool to use. I would say, you should use that, explore that. And if you've got more questions about that, please let me know. I'm also working on a free course on how we can use Business Model Canvas for HR process implementation. Okay, I think that's all we've got time for today. Thanks, Omolola. Omolola, I'm actually looking forward to you doing some free courses and doing some sessions actually on the live. So I'll be reaching out to you very soon. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I hope you have a fantastic Easter break wherever you are in the world, if you celebrate Easter. And if you don't, at least hopefully you have some time off. Take care and thank you. Bye.